Did you know that the ancient Maya kept death altars right next to their ball courts? And those altars were stained with the blood of the losers? What was this ritual all about? This is the story of one of the most brutal sports in ancient history. The year is 2018, and a group of archaeologists are excavating an ancient Maya site called El Naranjo. While carefully brushing dirt off a buried altar, they make a grisly discovery. They find 7 human skulls and a number of other bones, which means there's probably more. Right next to this macabre collection of body parts, they find a set of stone instruments used for making human sacrifices, including a sacrificial knife made of obsidian. Most of the ball courts were built next to temples and also next to altars. When archaeologists found the skulls at El Naranjo, they were found on an altar that faced east. This would have been the direction of the rising sun. To the ancient Maya, the eastern direction was associated with the underworld, which is known as Xibalba in their mythology. But instead of showing happy players enjoying a friendly match, they show violent scenes. One of the most famous examples of these carvings can be seen at Chichen Itza. Here we see players being decapitated, falling from a height, or getting dragged down to the underworld by monsters. It wasn't unusual for the games to be played right in front of the priests, as they watched intently to see if their team won. The religion of the Maya was extremely important to their everyday lives, and this was reflected in the ball game. To keep the earth fertile, the gods had to be appeased. The best way to do this was to give them what they wanted. And what the gods wanted most of all was blood. By spilling blood on these altars, the Maya believed that they were giving the gods exactly what they wanted. Even though they were playing a sport, they knew that there were higher stakes at play. They weren't just playing a simple game. And it continued to be played even after the Spanish arrived in the 16th century. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about ancient civilizations. See you next time. And this is thanks to a famous photograph that shows 2 teams playing. The photograph was taken in the early 1900s in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a black and white image that shows 2 teams of 10 players each. The team on the left is wearing white, while the team on the right is wearing black. The photo is blurry, but we can see that the players are using their hips, thighs, and elbows to move the ball. The game was still popular among the Maya, but now it was considered a pagan ritual. The Spanish tried to ban it, but they couldn't stop the Maya from playing. The Maya would often gather at the courts to watch elite warriors, nobles, and even kings play the game. The matches were a big deal, and they were attended by thousands of spectators. They were reenacting the eternal struggle between good and evil. The carvings showed the losing team being crushed by a jaguar, perhaps suggesting that they turn into beasts after their defeat. The ball courts were typically built from limestone and were very large. The longest one ever discovered was at the ancient city of El Tajín. It measured 170 meters long and 70 meters wide. These courts were used for centuries, and they were found all over the ancient Maya cities. Archaeologists have uncovered over 1,300 of them so far. The fact that the altar was located at the end of the ball court further suggests that the game itself was meant to mimic a journey through the underworld. The first interpretation is that the losers were sacrificed and their heads cut off and displayed on the altars. But the second interpretation is even more disturbing. Their hearts would be cut out and then their heads would be severed. Their still beating hearts would be offered to the gods, and their lifeless heads would be paraded through the city and finally displayed on the nearest altar. It says that the winners were the ones who ascended to the gods as heroes. Both interpretations are troubling, but in the end, both the winners and the losers lost their lives. This was because the game itself was a metaphor for a battle between good and evil, light and darkness, or the gods and the demons. The ball was usually made of solid rubber and weighed somewhere between 4 and 9 kilograms. Sometimes it was hollow and filled with either sand or a liquid. For the Maya, it was a matter of life and death. These altars were typically made of limestone or granite, and archaeologists have found hundreds of them throughout Mexico and Central America. They were frequently stained with blood, either from human sacrifices or animal sacrifices. During the pre-Hispanic period, the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca all made human sacrifices. Blood was spilled onto these altars as an offering to their deities. This was done to please the gods, but it was also done to keep the universe in balance. If the ball touched the ground, the players could use any part of their bodies to move it, except their hands and arms. They had to use only their hips, thighs, and forearms. Since the ball represented a deity, They needed to treat it with respect, and only use certain parts of their bodies when moving it. The Maya believed that the ball represented the sun, or the head of a god, so it was very important not to let your opponent capture it. It was played to mimic the constant war raging between these forces. The ball court represented the world. The team from the left tried to get the ball through the stone hoop on the right side of the court, but the team on the right tried to stop them. In doing so, the players would symbolically prevent the darkness from swallowing the light or the underworld from taking over the earth. This altar was used to spill blood. But what makes this discovery particularly fascinating is that the altar was found right next to a massive ball court. The ancient Maya kept playing it until the last player died. You'll want to stick around for the shocking reason why the Maya played this game. Welcome to my channel. Join me today as we look at some of the ancient Maya death altars, where the losers of a game were put to death. However, it was primarily the Maya who were the biggest fans of the sport. The name Pak comes from the Yucatan Maya language and translates to something like ball game. The name Pits, on the other hand, comes from the Nahuatl language spoken by the Aztec, and it means rubber. This name comes from the fact that the ball used in the game was made of rubber. Polk, Tapok, also known as Pits, or the Great Game, was a ritual ball game played by the ancient Mesoamerican cultures, including the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. This is because the ball game was banned by the Spanish when they came to the Americas. They deemed it a pagan ritual and prohibited its practice. As a result, we can only study the ruins of the courts and decipher the carvings on the walls to try and figure out how the game was played. Today, historians aren't entirely sure how the game was played. While the rules of the game remain a mystery, one thing is not up for debate. The game had a lot to do with death. This is why the ball court was always placed next to an altar, since it connected the three levels of the universe: the underworld, earth, and the heavens. In many places, the stone hoops were set up to resemble tree trunks. Some researchers believe that these stone hoops actually represented a tree of life. While the game was played just like any other modern sport, with two teams trying to score points, it was never about simply winning. On the walls of the courts, there are numerous carvings and reliefs depicting the game. There are two main interpretations of these disturbing carvings. It has been suggested that the losers may have been taken away from the court and led to the nearest temple where their sacrifice would take place. As I mentioned earlier, each ball court was built next to an altar, and some were even built inside the temples themselves. Altars were built all over Mesoamerica, not just next to ball courts, but near places where humans were killed for ritual purposes. The ancient Maya believed that the earth needed to be fertile in order for crops to grow and for people to survive. The Maya played the Great Game for hundreds of years. It was played during the Classic period, which lasted from 250 to 900 AD. Today, we don't know exactly how the game ended, but we do know that it was still being played in the early 1900s. The Maya were known for building incredible structures, including palaces, temples, and ball courts. These courts weren't just used for playing the ball game, they were also used for important ceremonies. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think was the most exciting part of the ball game? Let us know in the comments below.